And it is Denver Sports Tonight on this Monday night in the Mile High City. He's James Merilatt. I'm Will Petersen. We will roll with you for the next hour on a huge day for the Denver Broncos because a rare offseason treat. We got to hear from the Big Four down at the NFL's annual league meetings in Orlando, starting with Sean Payton bright and early this morning, team president Damani Leach, general manager George Payton, and owner and CEO Greg Penner all meeting with the media. Our own Andrew Mason and Cecil Lammey down there, capturing all the audio and really some insightful stuff, James. I'll give you the floor first, and then I'll tell you my biggest takeaway. But of all four guys who spoke today, what did you have that sort of raised, I don't know, the antennas a little bit, something you didn't expect to hear from the Big Four in Broncos country?
Well, for me, it has nothing to do with players and really the on-field product. It has to do with the look of the team. I didn't wake up this morning thinking we were going to find out the Broncos are getting new uniforms. I didn't think if they got new uniforms, they would keep the existing logo. So Damani Leach telling us that. I found that interesting. Color scheme being orange and blue, it was sort of like, yeah, you'd be silly to break from that. But I really didn't think they'd keep the same logo. I would be a fan of something new. I don't believe in going backwards. But I think a new look logo-wise would have been fine, but a new look in terms of the uniforms and getting rid of the swoosh down the pants is certainly long overdue. So that was the most surprising. I know Sean Payton had some things that were interesting, and then he contradicted George Payton, or George Payton contradicted him, I guess, because George went second. And then Greg Penner telling us how we're not, they're not in a rebuilding phase. That was fascinating. I thought those three guys, it was hard to tell who was saying what in terms of, what was truthful, what was a smokescreen, what was delusional, what was optimistic. I just found it all over the board, Will. So I couldn't quite decipher from those three what I should take away, but the uniform stuff was the biggest news to me.
Okay, so let's start there then. I had a little different takeaway. I was more on the Sean wanting to trade up for quarterback stuff. But let's start with the uniforms because I know people...
Yeah, and I want to be 6'6" and able to dunk. Like, good. He wants to do that. Great.
Okay, well...
It's why he's delusional. But okay, go ahead.
We're going to get to that in a second.
You're going to get me all fired up, and we're 3 minutes in.
It's not me getting you fired up. I literally passed along to you. I thought the most interesting thing was Sean Payton saying it's realistic to trade up, but that's fine. Uniforms.
Yeah.
1 to 10, how much do you care about uniforms?
I'm probably a 7 or an 8.
Okay, so I'm like a 2 or a 3. So I'm actually glad I'm having this conversation with you, someone who does think of them highly. First of all, explain the fascination with uniforms to me, just on a broad level thing. And then second of all, I want to play some Damani Leach audio, so I'll get to that in a moment. But first, just explain to me why people care so much about uniforms, because you're not alone. I mean, everywhere on social media today, this has gotten the most buzz by a mile. People care about uniforms, James.
Well, to some extent, the old Jerry Seinfeld bit is accurate, that you're really rooting for laundry, right? Because that's the one thing that's consistent year after year after year. The coaches change, the players change. Heck, the owners changed in recent years. The stadium might change. Like, that's the consistent thing. That's what you're rooting for, is who are the 53 guys that wear that uniform. And it's a visual representation of the team that you live and die with, that you bleed orange, you bleed blue, whatever you want to call it. And, there's a coolness to it. Are you going to buy the gear, right? Like, one of the reasons that I think CU became so popular with Coach Prime there, yeah, he's a big personality, and he's fun to listen to, and he's fun to watch, and he's fascinating, and he talks this big game, and he brought in some big-time players, and it was going to be interesting to see how it worked or didn't work, right? But part of the reason it also took off is CU gear is cool. Like, everybody, I went up there for the CSU game. I couldn't believe it, Will. It was like every single person I saw, and that's not that big of an overstatement, was wearing CU gear. If they were in fuchsia and teal, that probably wouldn't have been the case. But the black and gold looks sharp. The Buffalo's a good-looking logo. You put on that stuff, you walk around, and it's like, hey, okay, I like the way this looks and feels. Uniform's the same thing. People buy jerseys. They decorate the walls of their office with it. It matters because it's part of whether or not your team is cool. I hate to admit this, but I think the best uniforms in the NFL are the Raiders.
Okay.
They're plain, they're simple, they're classic, and they've withstood the test of time. And, you see Raiders fans decked out in that gear all the time. So that's why it matters. It's the one consistent thing year after year after year for your favorite team.
Okay. All right. I respect everything you're saying, and I know a lot of people feel that way. My team could wear clown suits every Sunday, and if they threw me parades and hoisted Lombardi trophies, I wouldn't care. So that's to me, this feels like a little bit of a distraction, James. Like, hey, we're going to be really bad next year. We might win 3 or 4 games, but guess what, guys? We got uniforms. The timing of this wasn't a coincidence. They knew Damani and Greg had to face microphones today, and they released it at 8 a.m. before the press conferences. So to me, it feels like a smokescreen, and it's just another thing of like the Broncos are, uniforms. And as I just said, you could wear orange jumpsuit. I don't care. You could wear anything. If you're winning football games, I don't care. But, hey, look, we'll trot our president out there and our CEO out there, and they'll get a couple questions about uniforms, and that'll kill half the press conference.
I don't think the timing was a coincidence, or was not a coincidence. You're right about that, or was a coincidence. I think it was very intentional. It gave them something positive to talk about. I don't have any disagreement with you on that front, but I do think it's something that, hey, you can control that. You can't control if the quarterback comes in here and, doesn't play up to his contract and what they gave up for him. And I'm the biggest Russell Wilson fan going, and even I would admit that. So there are some of those things, you can't control injuries. You can't control whatever. You can't control if Jim Harbaugh doesn't want to leave Michigan and D'Amico Ryans wants to go to Houston. So it's something you can control. I do think it subtly matters, right? I think that, there's a reason Michael Jordan was meticulous about his uniform. There's a reason Deion Sanders laid out his uniform on the floor of the locker room before every game and wanted to make sure he looked perfect. Like, you see CEOs that, hey, I got to have or lawyers, they got to have just the exact right suit for, their closing arguments. Like, how you look kind of does impact a little bit how you play. I get what you're saying about the clown suit. I just think it would be difficult to go out there in a clown suit and actually win. So, listen, it's a distraction. It's also March 25th. So I hate to poo-poo the big news today, quote-unquote news, but there's nothing that Sean Payton said on March 25th that is going to matter one bit on when do we think they're going to open? Well, they're going to open like on the 15th of September? It ain't going to matter. Not one bit. Him talking, just pulling things out of thin air again and talking about how they're going to be able to trade up. I got to find this magic wand that Sean Payton thinks he has. He can trade up no matter what. If he wants to, he can make it happen. And they're better at evaluating quarterbacks than everybody else in the league. It's just, every time the guy talks, man, it's high comedy to me. It's just high comedy to me.
Okay, for the record, first of all, the clown suit thing was a metaphor. It wasn't legitimately serious. Second of all, I want to hear from Damani Leach real quick before we move on.
Real quick, think about it. Think about the ugliest uniforms in the history of sports, right? You can, if you Google that, you'll pull up some Bleacher Report story with 25 slides, right? None of those teams won. They didn't.
That's objective, James.
Nobody goes out there. The Chicago White Sox wearing shorts back in the 70s were terrible. Now, is that the only reason why? No, but it does one of the best uniforms in all of sports. It's a classic look, and it's not the only reason they've been good. Now it's because they can spend money. But the New York Yankees, that thing hasn't changed in decades. Part of it is how you look. You play how you look. All right, I'll get off my soapbox.
All right, you're good. Sorry, I just got texted a fake Woj tweet that I was vetting out to make sure before I said it on the air was fake, and luckily it was fake. So glad my antennas go up enough that I see something that that's probably a little too weird to believe, that I don't just go, hey, Woj is reporting this, when it is not Woj. It is someone in their basement pretending to be Woj. Let's hear from Damani Leach, though, on wanting to evolve with these new uniforms, because you talked about not wanting to go back in time. I think you may like this from the Prez. Okay, so wanting to be new and different, I think you do like that part, James.
Yes.
But then the geographic standpoint, this is where a lot of people were getting all up in arms today. They're really maybe going to put mountains on these uniforms is what people are guessing, and a lot of Broncos country doesn't seem to be real thrilled about that idea.
Yeah, I kind of rolled my eyes at that too, right? I think about, some of the things the Rockies have tried to do, and they just they've fallen flat. it tends to not work. And again, if you go through the classic uniforms in sports and most of the best uniforms in sports, you're right, it's subjective, but you'll see some usual suspects on that list. Very few of them have a nod to the topography of the area, right? I mean, like the Indianapolis Colts. It's a very cool classic uniform. Has nothing to do with Indianapolis, right? They didn't. Oh, we got to put a oval in here that reminds you of the 500 or whatever the case may be. I just think sometimes that's trying too hard. I think tipping your hat to the past, that's the colors to me. It's orange and blue.
Yep.
You better have an orange home jersey as your primary home jersey. That would be a big mistake. But moving forward in terms of look and logo, I'm fine with that. Once you change it, then there's really no going back. Like, you can't go back in time. Like, the Yankees haven't changed it. The Dodgers haven't changed it. The Bears haven't changed it. Not in decades. Once you do, you can cross the same river. It's never the same water. So just give me something new. Give me something that's a completely different new look to where the Broncos have the best kits, to use a soccer term, in the league. I'd be fine with that.
Look at you, all fancy soccer, football kits. I mean, I guess it kind of overlaps depending on what country you're in. All right, so that's the uniform portion of this. Andrew Mason has details at denversports.com. And I was making sure we stayed on the tracks, but now I'll let us go down this road. You didn't like the Sean Payton soundbite today, that it could be realistic for the Broncos to move up. I want to play it for the listeners. There's some banter back and forth here with the media, and then we will dive into whether or not it's realistic for the Broncos to move up from 12 to possibly, I don't know, say 4 with Arizona? All right, so that banter was with Ian Rapaport of the NFL Network because, James, it sort of caused waves late last week. I believe it was Friday afternoon when Ian Rapaport said he didn't think Sean Payton would trade up because he thought he could win with Jarrett Stidham. That developed a lot of traction on social media and on denversports.com. And now today, Sean Payton calls Ian Rapaport right out to his face and says, no, it is realistic for us to trade up. And you could hear Ian go, I didn't really suggest that. And Sean goes, yeah, you did. I watched your report where you suggested that. And then he specifically singles out the Arizona Cardinals, who will pick at number 4, or at least slotted to pick at number 4. Talked about Monty Osenfort, their GM, and how he has Kyler Murray on his roster, so he can demand a hefty price for the number 4 overall pick. Sounds to me like Sean Payton wants to get in those sweepstakes, and I guess I don't understand why you're upset about that.
Well, here's the thing. I think he's saying realistic when he's really meaning possible. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. I can go buy a $4 million house too. But that at the end of the day, am I going to be able to pay the price that it's going to take every single month to swing that mortgage? That's the part of it that doesn't make it realistic. So they're going to – he says we don't know the price. Yeah, you do. What did the Niners give to go from 12 to 3 to get Trey Lance? Like
3 first-round picks, I believe.
That's probably the starting point. So you're going to give up 12 this year. You're probably going to be in the top 10 next year. Let's just be realistic. A top 10 pick next year, and then a first-round pick the year after that. So now you've given up 6 first-round picks for Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, and let's just say J.J. McCarthy, that's the guy they're in love with.
Well, you get a first-round pick back, though, so 5, really, because you go from 12 to 4.
Well, no, but I included J.J. McCarthy. I included the player.
Okay,
so
but
you've given up 6 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks for Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, and J.J. McCarthy. That's what you've gotten in return. That's what's now on your roster and what went out the door. That's a ridiculous way to run an organization.
So they shouldn't trade up, is what you're telling me?
They should not.
Wow.
Not unless they're going to get a guy that's 100% guaranteed, or as much as you can get in pro sports, the guy, right? Unless there was Andrew Luck at the top of the draft. And maybe Caleb Williams is that guy. Maybe. But I find it fascinating that the day before the national championship game, Michael Penix Jr. was all the rage, and J.J. McCarthy was like maybe a day 2 pick. Now you're going to give up 3 first-round picks to get him? Like, what are you talking yourself into here? just the desperation, I think, is lunacy. I mean, you better not miss on that one. And then how on earth are you going to surround him with talent when you've squandered that many first-round picks in the last half decade? How is he going to have any receivers and tight ends and running backs that are anything above the mediocrity that's on this roster right now?
Last time I checked, Puka Nacua was a 5th-round pick this last year.
Okay, well, find me the Puka Nacua that George Payton has found.
He hasn't yet, but I mean, that's a whole different conversation.
That Sean Payton found this first year that he was helping out.
I'm just saying, James, look at the 8 QBs in the quarterfinals of the NFL playoffs last year. 7 of the 8 were first-round picks, and they're all household names. They're Patrick Mahomes. They're Lamar Jackson. They're Josh Allen. They're C.J. Stroud. They're Jared Goff. They're Baker Mayfield. I mean, you have to have first-round talent to go deep in this league.
Okay, and how many of them were the 4th or 5th best quarterback in their draft? Jared Goff, 1. Baker Mayfield, 1.
Lamar Jackson, there you go.
Okay.
Patrick
You're
Mahomes.
right, and he's a unique talent that slipped in the draft.
Josh
People
Allen.
are looking at it saying, I don't know how to use this guy, and he doesn't fit our system. And I guarantee you there's some coach like Sean Payton that was like, I don't know if he goes through his progressions right. And John Harbaugh said, I don't care. He does things on a football field no other human being can do.
Wait, I just gave you 3 of the 4 in the AFC, though, that weren't the first quarterback taken in their draft. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson.
What was Allen? 3rd? No, he was 4th. That was the draft that went 1, 2, 3, 5?
7.
1, 2, 3,
Broncos
7.
took Chubb at 5.
All right, that's a big gamble. And the Bills give up 3 first-round picks for him? Look, if you get Josh Allen, great. If you get Patrick Mahomes, great. Do you think J.J. McCarthy is either one of those guys? I don't.
No, but I also think there's another wrinkle to this. And
it's
this
also like saying, well, a 6th-round pick. I mean, maybe it's Terrell Davis. Yeah, and maybe it's the hundreds of 6th-round picks that have otherwise been absolute non-factors in this league.
Okay, well, maybe I can cheer you up a little bit with this, okay? So Tom Pelissero goes on the NFL Network today and says that his sources are telling him that Adam Peters, who has Broncos connections, was here for a while, was part of the Super Bowl 50 front office. Now the GM of the Washington Commanders, he's in love with J.J. McCarthy. And that his sources are saying J.J. McCarthy is going to be the Commanders' guy at 2. Does this change your mind? Because it feels like you're not on board with McCarthy. But what if you could get to 4, and now you guarantee you either get Jaden Daniels or Drake May? I would think this is music to your ears that McCarthy may go 2, and the Broncos not only can't get him at 4, maybe they can get a better player at 4.
Yeah, no, if they can get Jaden Daniels, sign me up. Drake May, Mark Schlerett's review of him when they did the tape breakdown was concerning. It's not fair to compare quarterbacks from schools, but it is hard to not just think Mitchell Trubisky when you think of North Carolina quarterback. Now, Houston didn't fall for that and didn't say, well, Ohio State quarterbacks are not any good. I mean, right? Like, you can't judge it based on that, but that one worries me. But if you're going to get Jaden Daniels and you want to, mortgage a future, fine. But when you watch him play, does he seem like a guy that, he's very similar to Jarrett Stidham, that his number one attribute is his ability to process?
No, but I also think the Louisiana connection is important.
I'm not saying he can't process. I'm just saying it's not his number one attribute, right?
Right. But I think Sean Payton literally gives him bonus points because he played at LSU.
Well, that's preposterous.
Well,
I'm not
that's just how I
wrong,
feel. Yeah.
But really, if you've had a beignet down by the river in New Orleans, that your stock goes up.
Look at the free agents he signed, James.
If you've been to Cafe Du Monde, he thinks more highly of you.
If you ever step foot in the Saints locker room, you got a jersey with the Broncos last year, it felt like.
I know, I'm with you. It was ridiculous.
Right, I'm saying this isn't some hot take, he went to LSU, so Sean likes him more. I actually think that's a legitimate factor in all of this. I think it is something to consider.
Listen, if it is, and I'm not saying you're wrong, and based on what we've seen in the 14 months Sean Payton has been here, you're probably right. I just think that's preposterous. Like, that's a little bit like Dick Montfort saying he has the best GM in baseball in Dan O'Dowd, and he can't name another one. Right? Like, well, okay, then if the only thing you're going to look at is somebody who plays their home games in the state of Louisiana, you're kind of limiting your pool there. Like that's ridiculous to me.
I know, but maybe it all works out, right? Because maybe Jaden Daniels is the best player in this draft, and maybe the Bears fall in love with Caleb Williams. Maybe the Commanders overvalue J.J. McCarthy, take him at 2. Maybe Drake May goes to New England at 3, or New England doesn't take a quarterback or whatever, and then you can get to 4, and you can all of a sudden select Jaden Daniels. I thought that might cheer you up a little bit, and I think it has slightly. Because I think when we started this conversation, you were thinking 4 means McCarthy and McCarthy only. And I'm telling you, there's some news out of the league meetings today that 4 maybe doesn't mean McCarthy. 4 could mean Daniels or May. And I think that would probably perk some ears up in Broncos country, yours included.
It would perk me up if it's Jaden Daniels. Look, just watching college football this year, there were times where if you watched USC play and we saw him play the Buffs, you watch Caleb Williams like, man, that guy's special. No, he wasn't special all the time. And late in the year, he faded. But you could watch him make some plays and go, geez, not every team has a guy like that. And that certainly was what you said about Jaden Daniels. I mean, there's a reason he got some hardware at the end of the year. Did you ever watch a Michigan game, ever, and say J.J. McCarthy does something that other teams don't have a guy that can do that?
No, I thought they won with their running game and defense.
Yeah, exactly. Drake May, I've watched enough of him to be dangerous. Didn't watch a lot of North Carolina football. Bo Nix, I saw a lot of Bo Nix, playing in the Pac-12. I thought he reeked of being a system guy, but he impressed me more than J.J. McCarthy watching him play college football. And I think he's more a plug-and-play, ready-to-go guy because he feels like he's been in college football for a decade. But I'm not averse to trading up, Will, if you can go get somebody who's special. I'm averse to trading up because you want to go get a guy that, you think runs your system better. Go get a guy who does something that nobody else can do, right? Patrick Mahomes does things nobody else can do. Josh Allen does things nobody else can do. Who's putting up, 15 rushing touchdowns as a quarterback? Well, maybe Lamar. Yeah, exactly, because he can do something nobody else can do. If you just take these guys that are semi-pedestrian, you're just asking to set your franchise back. And listen, J.J. McCarthy may turn out to be great, but I think there's a better chance he turns out to be very, very average.
Well, Sean Payton did spill the beans today on something that George Payton wasn't real thrilled that he did. The Broncos actually had a private workout with J.J. McCarthy. So that is curious, James, that they went up there the day after, didn't want to be spotted when all the cameras were there and the NFL Network was there and this and that, and said, hey, go do it all again just for us. That's certainly telling right there.
It is. It is telling. But I also think it's just hysterical how the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing here, right? Because George doesn't want him saying that stuff. Sean just can't help himself. You put a microphone in front of him, some of it's honest to a fault. Like I think today was being honest to a fault. I think when he said he couldn't read his play sheet and called the wrong play, he was being honest to a fault. When he admitted he messed up calling a timeout to stop the clock before a punt on 4th down against the Chiefs before the end of the first half, he was being honest to a fault. But man, play your cards a little closer to the vest, right? If that's really the guy you want, and I don't think he's playing deception games here. I think George may be with what he says. I think Sean just, wants to talk. If that's really the guy you want, why on earth are you telling everybody that?
Well, those lattes could have been flowing in Orlando this morning. We do not know, James.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I just that worries me, and it the from the hip kind of mentality. Okay, I mean it can work, but how many of the great coaches in the league right now do you think, man, they just shoot from the hip? Do you think does Andy Reid strike you as a shoot from the hip guy?
No, very few.
Sean McVay, like none of them. And it's just it's worrisome to me. He's got to tell you how smart he is all the time and how they worked hard and God forbid anybody think you didn't go to his pro day. Be sure to tell us, no, we did more. We went up there the next day, we made him throw all over again.
Or even like Sirianni, he had some cocky moments this year and then his team just fell off a cliff.
Yeah,
right?
it's just
the more humble guys tend to do better. Let's put it that way.
You want to be the smartest guy in the room. You do. Like, I do think that's – if I was interviewing head coaches and trying to hire one, I want my head coach to be the smartest guy in the room. No disrespect here, but I don't think any of us ever said that about Vic Fangio, just as a recent example, right? Have him be the smartest guy in the room. But let everybody else tell you they're the smartest guy in the room. I don't want the guy that is consistently telling me and everybody else in the room that he's the smartest guy there.
All right. Meantime, our YouTube channel at Denver Sports is growing every single day, and we could use your help. If you could go subscribe to us at Denver Sports on YouTube, we'd appreciate it. And while you're there, maybe leave a comment, share a video, or hit the like button.